Hi, so in this video I'm going to talk about my progress towards the end of suffering, how it's going, and I'm going to go into details of my current experience. So first of all, quick summary, I guess. I first had this experience at the end of suffering, or what is often called liberation, what's associated with the later stages of awakening over a year ago. And that lasted for, I think, some days or some weeks, and then some more subtle levels of suffering and conditioning appeared. And then as that got cleared, it was a longer period of just this absolute silence and stillness and ease. And since then, it's kind of been like that intermittently. There some conditioning comes up, and that veils the what to call it? Yeah, it veils this inner Tao piece, and then it's resolved, and there is a longer period of just absolute silence and stillness and perfection, and it kind of comes and goes. And so first, I'm gonna include some quick context about my path, and then I'm gonna go into more details based on this long list of topics. And about each of them, I will cover how it relates to my current experience. So I've been meditating with some consistency for probably about 12, 13 years, and especially the last 6 years every day for many hours. And there were periods where it was just long periods of months where I was meditating for 5 hours or more a day, and there were periods where it was less. And I've used many different techniques and courses, and I've done lots of different stuff, like all sorts of therapy modalities, different forms of energy healing, studied human design, and a bit of everything. But the main process has been just a combination of meditation and inquiry. And so about a little over, so the first experience of the first glimpses of non-duality, of oneness, I had about 5.5 years ago. And then I had a shift to stream entry a little over 2 years ago. And then a little over a year ago was, I'm not sure what to call it exactly. I guess that's the entrance to the fourth path in the Buddhist tradition. Maybe it's the third one. It's hard to say, but that was the experience where it seemed like the end of suffering. And since then, it's been kind of deepening. So, and so as to where I am right now is somewhere between Omni and post-Omni, somewhere between like the 9 and 10 fetter. So it's not completed yet in terms of the process, but it's pretty close to it. At least that's what I see. And as to what's next, well, I don't know. Some say that it's sort of gone and it's done. Others say that there is just this endless process of deeper and deeper deepening. So who knows? We'll see soon enough. And basically now I have a long list of topics, keywords, but I was gonna just record my current experience in relation to, and that will be it. And by the way, one reason I'm doing this is because things change frequently, things change fast, and it tends to be really hard to remember how it was before. So that will also help me review this in the future and then see what it was like, because like it's really hard to remember how it felt for me a year ago or 5 years ago in terms of my experience. Experience is very relative with things shifting quickly. So, all right, here we go. First one, abilities. Have I noticed any kind of extra abilities, stuff like that? Nope, no magic, nothing like that. But there is certainly higher perception in terms of empathic stuff. Like I can feel people's stuff, traumas, emotions, sensations, feelings. It's like I can sort of feel energies more precisely, but I wouldn't call any of that special. It's just a normal thing that anybody can do as they become more empty internally. I do have maybe some extra, like I can kind of sense frequencies, the frequencies of people, the frequencies of places. And so I think if I were to work on that, I would probably be able to know what those frequencies mean by through a lot of experience. I don't have a lot of interest in that, but that seems to be developing by itself. So for example, sometimes I would just meet somebody and then I would sense their frequency and just know. And that would just resonate with me as like, this is the frequency that I sense many times, and I know that it means a sense of some sort of like a victim mode, for example, or it means some sort of deep sadness. So kind of things like that. In fact, I think I actually have less abilities now than I had before, because previously I was doing energy healing and I had a stronger sensing ability. It seemed like I was able to feel into things more than now. Now it has just become more adapted and more natural. So the next one, adjustment. There is certainly a lot of adjustment going on constantly. I don't have much of that. Next one, ambition. I used to have a lot of ambition. Do I have any ambitions now? I don't think so. Because there is a deep realization that achievement, accomplishment, whatever it is, does not bring any lasting satisfaction. It's just temporary anxiety-fueled pursuits that can never bring any deep satisfaction or joy. So occasionally desires come and go, but I don't really find any serious ambitions. Sometimes there are temporary ones, but not like in a major way. Anxiety. Do I have anxiety? Occasionally, because there are certain situations that haven't been fully deconditioned, so then some anxiety might appear. Usually it's kind of low level, and then usually it um, it is extinguished. It releases just throughout or after a few occurrences. So anxiety is about fear, and I still have quite a bit of fear, and it's kind of gradually releasing. So as it's releasing, there are certain situations that would still be connected to fear, and so they might prompt some anxiety. But there is no like mental connection. There is no association with it. I do not take it personally. It's just the conditioning of the body is still there. Beliefs. I don't really have any beliefs that I hold consciously. There are probably quite a few unconscious ones, but it's clear that beliefs are just opinions. Nothing is absolute. There is no absolute conceptual truth. It's just circumstantial. Beliefs are silly. Beliefs are like filters through which we view reality. So why would you have filters? Why not just look at reality directly? It's like, why would you superimpose your own expectations, opinions of how reality should be? Why not just accept it as it is? That's so much more effective, productive. Next one, body. What's my relationship with my body? I become more connected to my body, and it's still developing. So there is a deeper sense of integration, but it's still sort of ongoing. Yeah. Business. What is my current view or relationship with business? So I've spent about half my life engaged in business. I still have interest in it. I still have desire to be in business. I like it. I enjoy it. I'm good at it. So I still want to continue. But previously it was all about achievement, accomplishment, success, money. Now there is still some of that a little bit, but mostly now it just happens. There is a flow to it, so it still happens. And it's natural because this body and this mind is good at business after 20 years of experience. So it seems natural that I would probably continue business to some extent. Compassion. Yeah, there is deep compassion that's at the background of all experience. Whenever I interact with anybody, there is a kind of compassion that comes just from this understanding of the shared human experience, the understanding that everybody has some suffering. Almost everybody has some extent of suffering, and some of them are aware of that, some of them are not, but they're all just trying to get by, just trying to figure out to live a life. And so this perspective is always there, and so there is always compassion, because nobody's evil, nobody's bad or good. They're just living their lives, and there is a compassion in that, of course. Sometimes when I watch movies and there is a very sad scene, I might just cry, like I would cry for half a minute, and then it just stops, and then I just continue watching like nothing happened. So emotions come from time to time. Compassion is there, but at the same time, there is another part of compassion which is kind of just emotionalism, where you make decisions, where you are kind of triggered by things, by emotions, and when you become, and then you go and make decisions based on the emotion. So that doesn't really happen. So I would feel compassion, but I'm not gonna necessarily make decisions based on the emotions. Right, as I still might, if that seems like the most appropriate act in the situation. But yeah, I mean, compassion is always there. There is always a deep compassion, and if always a desire to help if people ask me. But if people don't ask me, I don't usually try, because that just doesn't work. Next one, conditioning. Conditioning. Yeah, there's lots of conditioning. There's layers and layers of conditioning. I think it's endless. Like, conditioning is all we are. If we remove conditioning, then nothing remains. Like, I would not be able to speak, to eat, to breathe. Everything is conditioned behavior. There is some conditioning that is undesirable, and so that's what is generally being extinguished and released. But there is still lots and lots of conditioning. And the interesting thing I notice also is that I need to be in a certain situation for the conditioning to come up, and then for it to be released. So there are certain situations that maybe I haven't had in many years, and so the conditioning that is stored there is still there. And so at some point I might have a certain situation for the first time in a long time, and then suddenly I might act out on that conditioning, or perhaps not act out, but at least feel it very strongly, because I just have not had the chance to see it, to release it. So I feel that yeah, there is endless amounts of conditioning, but certainly a lot less than before, like way less. Okay, decisions. How are decisions made? Now that's a really interesting one. They sort of just happen. Occasionally I have a sense that I'm deciding, but most of the time it just happens. There is a system of conditioning, there is a certain algorithm running here that makes decisions, and they just happen. And I have certain tendencies and certain preferences, and those play an important role in how decisions are made. Am I making decisions? No, I mean, that's silly. Design. design or human design. So what is my view on human design now? I don't know. I don't have like a strong belief in it. I've been studying it. I've been kind of practicing it a little bit. I've done quite a few readings, maybe more than 100 readings for different people over the past couple of years, and I find it to be quite accurate. But I don't have any beliefs around it. I just find it really interesting, so I keep exploring it, keep studying it. It does seem that as people go deeper in their own awakening, they become more aware of their design, of their human design, of their like, internal preferences that were built into them from birth. So that seems to be the case from my research and from my experience so far. But I don't know. I still find it fascinating to see, like, is this real? Is this really accurate? Is this true? And also, it's a system, just like any system. It has its own bias. So any system just creates its own kind of, its own language, its own framework. And within that framework, it works. It's internally compliant within its own framework. Internally, what's the word? Like it works. But is it like the best system ever? I don't think so. I don't know. But it's pretty good. I still use it. I still like it. Desires. Do I have desires? Oh yeah, definitely I have desires. Every time I see a beautiful woman, there is a desire coming up. When I see an opportunity to make a lot of money, a desire might come up. But those desires, it's like an energy. It's like an energy that comes up, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to go and talk to the woman, unless unless there is like something deeper going on, or yeah. So desires by themselves do not necessarily cause action, but they arise, and it's an interesting thing because sometimes it feels like the desires are like they're energetic in the body, and other times it feels like they're just in the mind, the mental. So I think desires always stay, but what changes is my relation to them. So previously I would be dedicating a lot of time and effort to pursuing different desires. Now I understand that they're just desires. They might be a story in the mind that if I pursue and achieve that desire, then I will feel amazing, that I'll be happy or whatever. But I know it's silly. It's just a story. Discomfort, physical discomfort specifically. So how do I experience discomfort? I do experience it quite a bit, and it's like anything. There is a certain adaptation. So sometimes there can be frustration, and there is a lot of discomfort going on in the body or in the situation or whatever. And but there is a certain adaptation, and then there is some decision being made, whatever is most fitting for the situation. A lot of the times I will just leave, like get up and leave in the middle, whatever it is. Other times I will, adjust to the situation. So it's whatever is most practical in the situation. Drugs. Well, I've never really been much into drugs, and now especially it just seems silly. Like, why would I ever take any drugs? Like, what for? And like, what's the point? Like, people do it to experience something, to change the experience, to shift the experience. And for me, first, through meditation, I've learned to shift my experience just through meditation, through different meditative techniques. And now, even that is no longer relevant because there is not much desire to change my experience. Mostly, I just want to experience whatever is being experienced. So I might take drugs if there is not much side effect, and it's something that's interesting. It's something that seems like a good idea in the moment. So it's like a very practical view on that. But generally, that's not. It's not very interesting. It's not very appealing. I haven't had alcohol in I think like 5 or 6 years. It's just like, why would you do it? It's just putting poison in your body. And I don't have that much health that I can go, physical health that I can go and waste it. Edge. edge. What is the edge of my practice? There is certainly some things that are going on the edge. One edge is the physical pain. So certain amounts of physical pain can definitely bring me out of this experience of perfection, of peace, stillness, and that seems to be, there is some adaptation going on, but it's slow. It's slower than like with emotional stuff. And I think it's also probably supposed to be like that because if there is a strong pain in the body, I want to be able to notice it so that I can do something about it. Like if I cut my hand, if I don't notice, don't do anything about it, then, something bad will happen. It will get infected and so on. So it is important to have some pain to do something about it. But there is a subtle amount of suffering that happens for me when the pain is above a certain level. It's not like a super high level, but it's not a super low one either. And it's increasing, it's improving gradually by itself. What else is the edge of my practice? Yeah, just mostly just things appear. Sometimes new situations bring up some old emotions that I haven't seen for a few years, and then that becomes the thing, and I just usually I notice it right away, and I feel it, and it goes away, and it releases. Sometimes it goes away right away. Sometimes it takes more time and more effort. So yeah. Okay, effectiveness. I think that effectiveness is a big part of my personality. It's a big part of my design. I've always been into effectiveness and efficiency. I still seem to be into all that. Not consciously, but just that's what I noticed that I like. I can still be quite effective, but motivation is not the same anymore. So the egoic motivations of achieving something, accomplishing something, becoming better, growing, whatever, that doesn't work the same way anymore. So, but once there is a decision to do something, then certainly I try to do it in the most effective way possible. So effectiveness is still there. And I find that I'm actually more effective than before because I still have the same sort of faculties and abilities, generally even better. But there is also no emotional hang-ups, no emotional issues, no reactivity generally. So things are just easier and faster in that sense. So I can be a lot more effective than before and have generally more energy. Emotions. That's a big one, I guess. Yeah, emotions come and go. There is generally no reactivity, so occasionally something might pop up if it's something very, very strong. But generally emotions just come and go, so I might be next to somebody who is extremely emotional, and I could just be completely still and silent. And I could also and like I said, I could also watch a movie that's very sad and just cry for half a minute, and then after that immediately I'm just back to normal. It comes and it goes, emotions just pass through me. And yeah, and at the same time, I do not often people project their emotions. People try to control their situations through projecting, through forcing the emotions of other people, trying to make other people feel guilty and so on. And that just doesn't work on me anymore. So then I talk to somebody and they try to guilt trip me into something, or they try to share some very emotional story because they want some kind of approval. And sometimes I do it just because I don't want to make things too difficult for them, or I don't want to create unnecessary confrontation. But I don't have to. often I can just stay still and silent, and usually we'll stop or I just leave. I don't really get this kind of socially emotional reactivity anymore. But at the same time, I can still choose to engage in it for the sake of pretending like I'm still normal, which is not so easy, by the way. It's a skill. It's something that I'm learning more about. Like, energy. So how do I experience energy? Yeah, energy is everything is energy, and energy is in everything. My ability to experience energy has surprisingly reduced. Before I was able to feel a lot more, and now that has dropped. And I think part of that is because it was there to help me notice some layers of conditioning that have now been released, that I was able to see them before by noticing them in other people. And now that it's released, it's harder to actually notice it in other people as well. It's just interesting how it works. But I can still do energy. I do vortex healing, and I've been experimenting with other energy modalities. And it does seem to work in some sort of mysterious way. But yeah, I don't know. Energy is interesting. I'm kind of curious about that still. Enlightenment. So am I enlightened? No, not really, because the criteria for enlightenment is that basically that shifting is, or at least that's how I understand it, that shifting between that I mentioned in the beginning, between like having something come up and kind of taking me out of that sort of perfection, and then coming back to it, that there is still that shifting. So I don't think I'm there yet, but at the same time I don't know if that is the case or not at all. Maybe that just never happens. I'm not quite sure. There are also certain, like in post omni, which is kind of after the fetters, there are certain things that disappear, like the ability to engage with your own conditioning patterns, the ability to notice. So some of those subtle abilities I still seem to have. And there is also fear. I still seem to have quite a bit of fear. It comes up occasionally. Like I had acupuncture. They put some needles in my neck, and I definitely felt some fear, some pretty intense fear. So it's still there. I mean, it seems like it's not an unreasonable thing to feel fear when somebody's putting needles in your neck. But the doctor said that like that was like more fear than most people have, actually, surprisingly. So I might even have more fear than most people. Yeah. So there is still certainly some things that haven't been processed yet. What is enlightenment, though? Enlightenment is, well, one analogy I like is just perfect, brilliant stillness. The perfection is just seeing that everything that happens, every single moment, every single action is perfect, because it cannot be any other way. Not because it's perfection as in the opposite of imperfection, but because it's beyond perfection. It just cannot be any other way. It is an experiential thing. It's not conceptual. So conceptual understanding doesn't help here. But once you see it and experience that, it is very powerful. The brilliant part for me is sort of everything is a little bit sparkly. Like the colors are sharp. Whenever I just focus on looking at things, I notice how everything is just so sharp. Like the white is so white and the yellow is so yellow. Yeah, it's nice. And the stillness, yeah, there is just deep stillness all the time. So there is that. There is also this deep imperturbability, which is associated with enlightenment as well, generally. And that's what I feel most of the time as well. Not always, but most of the time. Yeah. So there's that. Next one, exercise. Exercise. I guess that's physical exercise. I am realizing that I need to exercise more regularly. And I notice it kind of happens in a more natural way. Like I would not exercise for a few days and then notice that my body is not as as strong and limber, and so I realized that okay, I need to exercise because I'm suddenly getting some stiffness or some pain or some tiredness. So I like exercising. I love it really. Extinguishing. So extinguishing is kind of, that feels like the good word for the process that I'm going through right now. That things sort of come up and then they get extinguished, and sometimes they never come up ever again, and I just don't remember them anymore. Other times they come up a few times, and every time they get much, much weaker. So yeah. Fear. Yeah, there is quite a lot of fear. And I personally generally have a tremendous amount of fear that I've been born with, and both in my design and in general throughout my life, like since childhood. I've always just had a tremendous amount of fear of everything. So I worked a lot with fear. And so now I obviously have a lot less than before, but still it's quite a bit of fear, so it's still there. And there is this, and it's gradually coming out, and it just has its own way, its own process. Is there a fear of death? No, not really. Like, what's there to fear? It comes and it's it. Is there a fear of pain? Actually, maybe a little bit, yeah. Maybe. So yeah, there is fear. Feelings. The feelings are more sharper, they're more direct. I certainly feel things even more than before. And often it's more open. Like when I am around people who are more open, I become a lot more open. When I'm with people who are like not as open, I'm not as open. But I have very deep capacity now for feeling. And so that often just depends on the situation. And I'm quite adaptable with that. Finances. So that was an interesting one for me, because one of the biggest fears throughout the process of the awakening of liberation was that I would become kind of bad with managing my finances. And one reason for that is because in some of my early experiences of oneness, I suddenly had the realization that I was one with everything, with the entire universe, and so why would I need money? And I thought maybe I'll just give it away. I'll give it to somebody who needs it. And so that kind of scared me because it didn't seem like the best course of action. So how did it change now? Finances. I would say I'm still rather conservative with my finances. So I'm very rational in terms of how I invest my money, about my financial decisions. Similar to before, maybe even better, because again, there is much less emotional hang-ups in it. So I'm generally pretty good at finances, as I was before, even better. Food. So what about food? So in terms of food, I noticed that like now I have a pretty good idea of what kind of food is good, is best for my body, because I'm quite sensitive to a lot of stuff. And so whenever I eat something that is not ideal, I feel it quite often, like right away. I have some stomachache, I have a headache, I feel my energy going down, I have diarrhea. So I become very rather strict with the food that I eat. And this is in my design as well. So food is very important. And occasionally I still have all these habits. So occasionally I would eat something sweet, some chocolate, and then I noticed that it's not that great for me. I don't really have like guilt or a lot of like mental stuff, mental loops going on. It doesn't really happen anymore. But there is still this habitual patterns of doing things, so they're gradually being extinguished as well. Of like eating bad food, so it's gradually being. And sometimes I'm in a situation where it's just very hard to get healthy food, so then I would find whatever the best thing is. Another thing that's interesting is I think it's harder for me now to do fasting. Well, unless like I really decide to, then probably it's fine. But most of the time, like if I'm hungry, I'm just gonna go and get something to eat, which is interesting. So it's like take preference. Yeah, take preference. Okay, goals. So my relationship with goals, goal with GOAL, goals. My relationship with that is it's not super clear. So I still kind of go back and forth occasionally. Like sometimes I make some goals, make some objectives, some purposes, and then I realize that's stupid. What's the point of that? That's silly. Right now, how do I feel about goals? Yeah, it's silly. Just letting things be as they are. It's just the perfection of life passing through me. What's goals are just certain attachments to what the mind or the conditioning is. They're not real. They're not. They have a promise of bringing some sort of happiness, comfort, freedom, but it's not real. Um, but this is kind of like relationship to goals in terms of the way they're traditionally seen as you set your goals so that you are focused and you achieve something good. But there is also a more practical aspect to it, and that I definitely can understand. Like, for example, when you have a company, when you have a team, then you have a business, you have to have some sort of goals, you have to have objectives, because this is the way that people come into coherence in a group, and that's really important. So the practical aspect of it is certainly I can see that and I can use that, but like personal goals, not really. Okay, God. What is my relationship with God? I don't have anything of that. Right, happiness. I think happiness is this socially conditioned concept that when you ask somebody, "Are you happy?" it kind of presupposes that happiness comes from having things that you want in your life and not having things you don't want. Like you have health, you have family, you have a partner, house, work that you enjoy, things like that, and that brings you happiness. So that's kind of the general concept of happiness. So like if I think like, am I happy? It doesn't really apply. Like the question doesn't really apply because I know that's not really that's. But like if the question were asked in that sense of, okay, do I have enough money? Do I have like a house to live with? Do I have like good relationships and routines and so on? Yeah, sure. So I could say that I'm happy. And usually when people ask me, are you happy? I'm not going to tell them that that's a silly question. It doesn't apply. It makes no sense to me. I just say, yeah, it's all good. All fine. Something like that. Health, physical health. Health is important. So I've become more health conscious. You got to take good care of the body. And it doesn't come as much it doesn't really come out of like some personal attachment to it. It is my body, but it's more just a practical thing. Like, yeah, I gotta take care of my finances. I gotta take care of my body. Body seems a bit more important, but yeah, it's in a similar category. I think helping. Yeah, I like helping people, but I've noticed that if I'm not asked for help, then it's I'm not gonna go and help somebody if nobody asks me. It doesn't seem like that's the situation calls for it. I might suggest, I might offer it, but that's not really natural to me. And some people are more about just helping others, and I've been kind of more focused on my own path, and I like empowering people. So if I can do something that empowers people, then I'm a lot more kind of drawn to that versus just like helping people temporarily with something. But I always do when I have a chance to help somebody with something. I usually do, depending on the situation. Investments. Yeah, so like I mentioned, all the practicality of that is, generally that's something I've been doing for the past 20 years. I still do it. I'm still doing investments, managing a portfolio of stocks and some real estate. So that's emotions play an important role in investments. So I think I'm probably a lot better than most in the sense that I can do it in a far more rational manner. So I think that might give me an edge as an investor, actually. But I still need to learn more about the actual, like there is a lot of research that goes into investments, and I have a lot less motivation now to spend so much effort and time in the research. So that is the downside of that also. Interest. What kind of interest do I have? How have they changed? I find lots of things interesting. Like I can get interested about anything practically, and it keeps shifting all the time. Like a few months ago, I decided to learn how to play bridge, and I was just obsessed with it for a few weeks. And I played a tournament. I played some tournaments online and then offline with a partner, and then I just lost interest in it. And then I was obsessed about some other game, some other things, and it just comes and goes. I don't really get obsessed as much about things lately over the past months or so. But yeah, my interests shift. I had an interest in politics and in the economy and investment and business. I don't have as much interest in spirituality anymore, though. Like that used to occupy most of my attention for a certain period of time. Now it's just because what's there to be interested. It's all everything is just straightforward. It's easy. Yeah, my interests sort of shift between different things, but I certainly have a lot of things that I find interesting, and I find people interesting and systems and understanding how things work and doing things and like doing sports and learning sports, learning about my body, learning about energy, helping people or making money, doing business. Like lots of things are interesting for me now. Love. Well, there is a kind of default compassion there, default love towards everybody and everything. So it's always there. I don't know about romantic love. I haven't had an opportunity to test that in some time. But yeah, there is always love. I suppose there is different levels of love, but I'm not sure about that yet. So I'd have to have some opportunities to explore that. Mind. Now, what about the mind? The mind, yeah, it's not very active. So my mind used to be very active many years ago. It was extremely active. There would be constant thinking nonstop. I couldn't meditate. When I first started meditating, it took me a really long time, a lot of effort to get to a point where I could actually sit for just a couple minutes or a minute to relax and meditate, because the mind was so active. It's crazy. Now it's generally just quiet. Like if I just kind of look into space, it often just goes blank right away. Like that's me. Like there could be just long periods of no thoughts sometimes, and then other times thoughts just pass through me and like they come and they go, and that's it. Occasionally the mind becomes more engaged and more active. Then there is something strong, like when I have some strong physical pain or some strong emotions coming up, something like that. So the mind becomes, but there is always this awareness that, yeah, that's just what's happening. That's part of the experience. And all right, I gotta speed it up. Money. Yeah, so my relationship to money, it's just very practical. Money is important, it's useful. I have a tendency to be like cheap, to try to spend as little as possible and invest more. That's still there, but not as strictly, not as much. I probably still have some conditioning around money. Everybody does. It goes very deep in our culture, in our daily life. Yeah, I like a good deal. I always liked a good deal. I have a gate of deal maker in my design. Motivation, that's a big one. Motivation is kind of the biggest downside maybe of this whole process of awakening and the latest stages of awakening, especially because I realized over and over that the motivations that I've had, they were all very egoic. They were about achieving something so that I can have something to add to myself, so that I can be something, so I can be better, so I can grow, so I can have more approval, success, and so on. And most of that is gone now, so motivation can be hard to come by. So there is certainly a motivation to keeping the body healthy. There is a motivation towards keeping the mind healthy as well, because so like for example, I block a bunch of different websites on my phone, on my computer, so that I don't end up wasting time like on social media and so on. So that sort of protects my mind space in a way, right? I think that's quite important in our time, because there is so much negativity out there, so much stuff going on. You have to protect yourself from that. What was the word again? Motivation. Oh yeah, motivation. Yeah, motivation can be a strange thing, because often I have an idea, I think about doing something, and I feel very motivated in the moment, but then the next day it just goes away. So what I've started doing is waiting to see if if the motivation towards something is consistent. And then I would go and take some action after some days or some weeks. If I see that, okay, this is still there, let's do something. There is also a lot of just it's like motivation is not really needed, because things happen naturally most of the time. Like for example, I live in Thailand, and I wanted to learn Thai on and off. I've been studying a little bit, but now I don't, because I don't have motivation. I don't have a good reason to. But I do find that whenever I'm in a situation that then I need to speak Thai and I can't speak that well, then there is a motivation, and then I go home and then I start learning a little bit. But then it goes away. And I think that's actually normal. That's a natural process. So if, for example, I've decided at some point that this is a very important thing for me to learn Thai, to become fluent in Thai, then I will just go and study it. But now it's like there is a mental there is a sense that, it's useful, it's helpful, I live in this country. But then at the same time, it's not, I don't need it as much. I don't use it as much in my daily life. So the motivation is not very strong. So it's like the motivation is just another thing that is constantly adapting to the situation to fit the needs of the system, the organism. Movies, watching movies. Now that's a weird thing. The past decade or so, I found that movies just make no sense. It's just very hard to watch. I like things that are kind of logical, rational, and most of the movies are just ridiculous. It's like if you just sit down and have a quick chat, then the problem will be solved and you won't need the entire movie. Most of the movies, the premise is ridiculous, the entire story is ridiculous, there is only a lot of action. So that kind of makes it hard to watch. Occasionally I find something good. I like movies that are straightforward, that are direct, like Lord of the Rings. You have, like bad guys, the good guys. Of course, it's from, their perspective, so the labels are relative. But it's clear, like it's very clear. There's a group of people that want to, invade and take over. And then there is another group of people that want to kind of protect and prevent that. And so there is a fight going on. So there's a clear thing going on. So it's rational, it makes sense. In that story, it makes a lot of sense. But then you have these stupid movies that happened more recently, like Avengers, the Infinity War, the one that Thanos tries to snap to kill half the population of the universe. I mean, what's the point? You kill half the population, and then 30 years later, it will be the same population again. So what are you going to do? You're going to do the same thing? It makes no sense. Why not just double the amount of resources, or create some kind of population barrier or whatever? Could be so many much better solutions. Like the entire premise is just ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. And that's my problem with a lot of the movies. And also, it's all just very emotional. The movies lately, it's all just emotionalism. It's like people are extremely reactive, and everybody is reacting to everything in all these movies. It's I don't know if it's a cultural thing, a cultural shift or something, but it's kind of hard to watch movies lately. So I still like movies, but I watch more like Indian movies, foreign movies sometimes, or some older movies lately. Yeah. Okay. Normalcy. What is normalcy? What is normal? Uh, I don't know. Well, normal is generally what is considered mainstream, like what is considered normal by most people. So, and like most of the time, I don't want to. Like most of the time, it's not what I want. It's more like it it's kind of like more reasonable. It's more rational to just fit in and just be like everybody else, because you don't want to constantly create conflict everywhere, right? So it's natural to just try to just be similar to others, and that's kind of what I do. And so there is an adaptation going on. So wherever I am, whenever I am, I will generally adapt to a certain extent to the situation. But at the same time, I don't uh, like I don't really go any extra steps towards being accepted or anything like previously. I would be really going out of my way to be accepted in a group, to get some sort of social approval. And now I just never do it. So frequently I go to some place or I'm at some event or something happens and I just don't like it, and it's just not working for me. Like I was at this group, I went to this investors meetup, and it was just loud, too many people, like 20 people, and a lot of chit chat and small talk. I just stood up and left. It's like, okay, whatever. I realized it's not interesting for me. It's not useful for me. Like, what's the point of being there? I didn't feel upset or anything. It just, okay, it's not very interesting for me. So I leave. And that's kind of often what I do. I don't really make up fake excuses. I will just say like, okay, I gotta go, and then I go. So that is often how I am nowadays. So normalcy is, I mean, what is normal is completely dysfunctional. Like what is considered normal nowadays, it's absolutely dysfunctional. It's like eating fast food, working some mindless job for 9 to 5, um, studying in university for 4 years, learning completely useless stuff, and you know going out drinking every weekend, having a family, like all of those things that just make no sense. It's utterly ridiculous. Like normalcy is just, it's completely dysfunctional. So yeah, but I live in a society, so I do what I need to do in order to fit in. I just do the kind of the minimum. So I live in Thailand because in Thailand it's just easier to live. Like I left Israel because it's kind of more difficult to have an easygoing life there, right? And um, so the normalcy in Thailand like fits me more. Openness, openness. Yeah, there is a lot of openness here, but like I mentioned, there is a certain adjustment. So like if I'm speaking with somebody who is not very open, then I'm not going to be very open, and vice versa. Uh, like I remember I met this woman who was very, very open. It was just so beautiful, and I found myself being also like open, very open with her, like immediately right away. And it wasn't anything romantic, just a kind of normal social situation and discussion. And it's like it right away, like in a few minutes, it kind of went into just talking about deep topics, like we've known each other for years. So that just happens. But it's very rare because most of the people, they don't have that kind of capacity for openness. But I enjoy it. when the opportunity comes. And I don't try to change, to force it or anything. It just happens as it happens. And I find that I'm not like always open on anything. Also, I find that I also still have some conditioning, some things that, like some topics that I might not be as comfortable about. So there is still certain conditioning around things. I think that, there is an enormous amount of that. Like if you, for example, if you just ask yourself, what are you not comfortable talking about? Like with a stranger or with somebody you know, a friend, like there would definitely be some things coming up. So I think everybody has some stuff. Others. Are there others or not? It's a metaphysical question. I mean, the only honest answer I can give is I don't know. I don't know. It hasn't become clear for me yet, to my experience, so we'll see where it goes. Pain. What is my relationship with pain? Physical pain, naturally, right? Pain is kind of at the edge of my practice still, so relatively strong pain can definitely take me out of it. Can create a certain amount of suffering, but the suffering only lasts as long as the pain lasts. So when I have a headache, when I have some other pain, like there might be a certain degree of suffering, there might be some resistance, like, oh, I shouldn't have it. But then at the same time, there's usually that awareness that's seeing, okay, yeah, this is happening, there's this experience that's happening, and it's gonna last for a little bit and then it will stop. And so there is this resistance, there is this mild suffering during it, but then it's gone, it's gone. And by the way, if it's really extreme pain, then the suffering might be quite high as well. So it scales up. I don't know how that, like if that ever goes away completely. Like if you get to a point where you can just have any kind of pain and you would be completely just rational, practical, and be like, okay, I seem to have lost my leg. I need to patch up the wound. I don't know, maybe. I'm very far from that for sure. I naturally have probably like a lower pain tolerance than most people because I have so much fear. But that I, from conditioning and trauma and all that kind of stuff. And so I think now my pain tolerance has increased for sure, but still it's not like a very high level. But I do notice that I don't really need painkillers. I don't need any medications generally for pain. So like a lot of the times when I don't really go to doctors very often, but when I did, and I remember like sometimes they would ask me like, oh, do you need, here's some painkillers. So, and I would just kind of think like, this is a weird concept. Why would I need that? And then I realized that wouldn't make any sense to them. Like the concept of a painkiller doesn't make sense to me, but asking the question, why would I need, wouldn't make any sense to them. So I don't really engage with that. But for me, pain it's just another experience. It is a powerful experience that can take me out of my inner sort of inner peace. But it is just an experience, and so typically I can simply be with it and observe it and look at it and explore pain just like I would explore food or whatever. But of course, if it gets very, very strong, then I would probably take painkillers, but that would be a very different type of threshold. And also there is an ability that I have found that I can sort of transcend pain, that if I sit with it long enough, because it's just a sensation. So, and I've spent so much time sitting with sensations, thousands of hours probably, that I can simply sit with it and gradually it disappears. It dissolves. So I've been doing that as well. I had a period when I had a lot of headaches, like really strong headaches after an accident, with a strong concussion. And so I was just sitting with them and they kind of dissolved gradually. But then I realized that wasn't a great idea because I actually had something I needed to do to work on that, to improve the physical aspect of that pain. So it goes both ways. But yeah, pain is it's a thing. It happens. The other thing, though, is fear of pain, because when most people, when they have pain, there is a kind of mental conceptual thing, emotional thing that goes with it, and then there is the actual physical pain. So for me, mostly it's just the physical pain, but then like the nervous system effect. But then there is also the occasionally like the emotional thing. But that I think that mostly is gone because there's a mostly like a layer of beliefs about, oh, this pain is gonna be there, and this is bad, this is gonna get worse, all those kind of things. There is still some of that, but it's mostly gone, I think, for me. Have to kind of wait and see what happens when I have some more pain in the future. So it's hard to tell. But yeah, pain is definitely kind of at the edge of my practice. So that's still an ongoing thing. So the pain can suddenly take me out of this sort of experience of liberation, of freedom. Past lives. What is my experience with past lives? I don't really have any. So many people have seen their past lives at a certain point in their journey, even much earlier points in their journey. I still haven't. I had some experiences that maybe it was related to my past lives, but I don't know. I also don't have a lot of interest in that. So some people I've spoken from our community have shared that they basically had this really detailed and long experiences where like they were literally shown their past lives either in dreams or in meditations or in all kinds of energy practices. So I didn't have anything like that. Maybe it's because there is some conditioning that's preventing that. Maybe it's because I just my system is just not very predisposed to that. Like it's not very interested in that. There is no like in the conditioning that has much interest in that. I don't know what, but yeah, I haven't had much of that. The other thing is also, so there is a thing in the Buddhist tradition and in other traditions that after a certain point they say that that's it. This is your last life. You will not be reincarnated anymore. And well, it's a belief. So it's just a concept. It's a belief. I don't have any kind of opinion on that. But from my own experience, what I notice is that it kind of makes sense to a degree because, like, when you see through the nature of self or the illusion of self, when you are no longer tied to anything, then what kind of reincarnation could there be? Like, yeah, of course, there's nothing to reincarnate. It's just then you see that you were never born and you can never die and you just exist and there is only existence. So what's there to reincarnate and into what? For what purpose and why? It's all just concepts. Okay, next one, patterns. So there is lots of patterns of behavior, of feeling and thinking. There is again a kind of adjustment process, an extinguishing process. So some patterns that are seen as unfavorable, unproductive, they get released, they get extinguished. Some don't. They can develop new patterns if the system decides if there is a need for that. Some patterns are definitely deeper than others. So there are certain patterns that have taken a long time to get released, and there are some that are still there. So yeah, it happens. Perfection. So like I mentioned, perfection is it's actually beyond perfection. It's this realization that everything that happens is perfect because it cannot be any other way, because that is just the nature of reality. It's kind of hard to explain, just like most of these things. How do I experience perfection? It's like, for example, there would be some experience and I would have some desire. Like I want to go someplace and I want to book a ticket and I want, somebody to help me find a place or whatever, right? And so I had this experience recently. and I want to go there, and then there is challenges. I cannot find a place, and it's expensive, and it's hard, and I gotta get a visa and so on. And it feels like that's not how it's supposed to be. That's not, But then another thing comes up, and that seems better, and it seems like that's why it happened, because there is another thing that is better. So that is like the perfection. That's the opposite of imperfection. But the perfection I'm talking about is beyond perfection. So that's kind of beyond those two. So that would be just deeper, in a sense, that experience doesn't matter. The content of experience doesn't necessarily matter. It's like things are just happening as they do. The chain of causality, it just flows through life. And that's the perfection of life, because things just happen as they do, as they are. So something like that. Yeah. People. What about people? I'm not sure. Yeah, I like people. What is my relationship to people? Right. I like people. I really enjoy meeting people, connecting with people, pretty much everybody. That's one of the most enjoyable things for me now in life, just meeting new people. It's always interesting. I like people. Politics. I had developed an interest in politics recently. Like, I like understanding systems, so it was interesting. Like, it was interesting to understand how it actually works. Like, why is everybody always lying? How does this work? Like, has it always been like that? And it's like, are there really good guys and bad guys? Is it, but they aren't, by the way. Everybody has their own objectives. But it was just interesting. I found it very interesting. And I've been reading different books about it, and watching videos and learning how the political process works. Not on the superficial level of, you have the House of Representatives and whatever bullshit we were taught in school, but how it actually works. Like, what people, what is people's like actual hidden agendas, and what are they saying, and why is it that they're saying what they're saying, and why is it this actually works? Why is it so effective? Like, why is the campaigns run by the media so effective? So all those kind of things I found really interesting and fascinating to understand. It's like I like understanding the systems, the way that things work, just understanding how things work and why, and that's interesting. Yeah. And the other thing is, politics is one of the biggest triggers for people. Like, even people that have reached the highest levels of awakening, I found that they can sometimes be quite triggered by politics, and they can sometimes have strong political opinions because they just adopted the opinions of their group that they are in, and then they defend them, which is part of human nature. So to me, that was interesting. I might have some very subtle things like that now, but not like in a serious way. I could definitely discuss anything, and if they have even completely opposing views, even if they think my views are ridiculous. I don't actually have any views. In fact, my views on politics is that it's all just very relative. Everybody's just pursuing their own self-interest. That's the way it works. So I don't have any kind of opinions on anything political. That would be silly to have opinions. Yeah. I have certain preferences, definitely. Like I want the country where I live to be, politically stable, so that I don't have to face some extra trouble. But other than that, yeah, I find it more interesting to understand that I don't have any political opinions. Powers. Do I have any powers? I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of. Practicality. So practicality is becoming more, and I've always been very practical, and now practicality has become more and more sort of important in my life. Like, I find, because when you have no emotions, when you have no reactivity, then you have no attachments, mostly no motivations. Like, what else is there? There is just the practicality of the moment. just like the saying goes, you cut wood and you carry water. So kind of like that. There is just the practicality of life. And it emerges out of the situation, out of the demands of the situation and the demands of the preferences and so on. So that's practicality. Practices. Am I doing any practices? No. I mean, well, physically, yes. Like I go to the gym, I exercise, I do some qigong, I try to eat healthy. But in terms of like meditative practices, not in a consistent way like I was before. Like before, I was like, okay, I'm gonna meditate 3 hours, 5 hours every single day. I'm gonna do inquiry. I'm gonna do this and that. I don't do that anymore. But practices sort of arise naturally out of the situation. So sometimes something comes up and it just, and I notice that there is an emotional thing coming up with that. So then sometimes I would just release it in the moment. I notice and I let it go. Other times, if it's deeper, I would sit down. I might do some inquiry. I might look into that. So the only practice I do basically is just an inquiry, and I think it's like the only practice there is in later stages of awakening. What else is there to do? Because you just like inquire into some thoughts, into sensations and feelings, and you let something go, and that's it. Sometimes it's just sitting with some sensations, some energy, and letting it release. Other times it might be exploring some thoughts or some subtle beliefs that I haven't seen before and noticing them and letting them go. So that's kind of the only thing. And this is a weird thing because like when I talk to people who are into spirituality and they meditate, of course, and they ask me if I meditate. And I sort of say, well, sometimes I say, yes, I do. Sometimes I say, no, I don't, because I don't really meditate anymore. Like there is no meditation. I can't even meditate. Like how would I even meditate? Before, when I was meditating, like I would go to different places, different layers, like different experiences, experience of joy, of freedom, of love, of peace, of stillness, and kind of deepening into those experiences, or what in Buddhism sometimes called jhanas, so on. How like states of samadhi and so on. But then it's all just gone. Like there is no separation, so there is nothing to meditate into. It's like there is just stillness. If I'm not doing anything, and I just like look into somewhere, there is just a kind of silence and stillness. Yeah. I do occasionally do some vortex healing because I've been practicing that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just like inquiry, and nothing else really makes sense or seems to have effect anymore in terms of practices. I've been doing some therapy, but I stopped that recently also because it did not seem to do much. Like it's more effective to just wait until things come up and then work with them because yeah, life is my therapist now. That's a good one. Maybe I should remember that. Pretending. I do pretend sometimes. I pretend to be normal. Quite often, actually. Well, because how else would it be? Like, how else would I be able to communicate with people or interact with people? And I find that I just adjust to situations quickly. Like, if I'm playing a game, then I'm playing a game and I'm completely focused in it and I'm immersed in it. It's not like, I lose my. I sort of am just fully immersed in it, whatever I'm doing generally. Not always, but yeah, generally. So pretending. So that's the one that's kind of interesting for me also now, that maybe like on the edge of my practice in a way, because I noticed that like it's like if you are living in the world, you have to adapt, you have to pretend in a way. You cannot go around saying that nothing exists, that it's all an illusion, that nothing is real, because people think it's real. People look at it seriously. Like it will be very uncomfortable for people and they will have a lot of resistance to that. And you will just not have a nice time doing that at all. And I don't need any unnecessary conflict in my life. I'm not here to try to wake anyone up or anything like that. Why would I? What for? Like if somebody comes to me for help, sure, but aside from that, everybody has their own journey. Why would I intervene? So yeah, so there is a certain amount of pretending. So there's like a certain amount of, it's like learning how to walk again, learning how to be in the world and be seen as normal, while at the same time not having to times or retaining as much freedom as possible. So that's an interesting kind of process. I don't know how well I'm doing in that. I would like to get feedback on that occasionally, but nobody tells me. But I think I'm doing reasonably well. I think most people think that I'm normal, so I think I'm succeeding. Purpose. Do I have a purpose in my life? No, not really. It's just life. Life moves through me, and I move with it. There is no purpose. Purpose comes from the mind. Like let's say if I had a purpose that, and I decided, for example, if I were to decide that I'm here to help people awaken, that would come from the mind. That would be desire. That would be just some sort of mental egoic conditioning. It exists in the dream. It exists in the mind. As all goals, all purposes do. It's all conceptual. It's all purely conceptual. It's not real. So not really, but occasionally I feel like maybe I should have some sort of purpose. Maybe I should have some kind of intentions in life, stuff like that. That comes up sometimes. And there is benefit to having some things, maybe like temporary, whatever, I don't know. Like you have to have some lists, some plans for sure in life. But like a life purpose, I don't think so. Also because we cannot know anything. How can I know what my purpose is? How can I know what am I here to do in life? Like if I were to decide that, okay, now my purpose is to make as much money as possible, maybe that's not what I'm supposed to do. Or if I were to decide that my purpose is to go and, spread human design so that everybody knows it and help people through it, like maybe that's not what I'm supposed to do. Maybe by doing that, I would actually waste my time. And my real purpose was to make as much money as possible. Like I can't know anything. I don't know anything. So anything that I decide is my purpose. And nobody knows anything either. Like nobody can tell me. Guide or a god or an angel. There is nothing that you can truly know. Nothing you can truly trust. There is nothing that is known in life. Everything is just happening as it's happening. So how can I have a purpose? It makes no sense. But if I were to have a life purpose, I guess my best approximation would be something like, well, right now, like at this kind of period of time of life, and it changes right now, that might be basically like adapting and adjusting to this life and to clearing the conditioning that still takes me out of this deeper state, and then also taking good care of my body and my health. Yeah, something like that. But like everything changes. Yeah, like Like a few months ago, I thought that I wanted to start a business. I wanted to get back to business. Like a month ago, I thought that I wanted to get deeper into investments, and I thought that maybe I will get into crypto or whatever. It comes and goes. I get interested and excited about things, and then the excitement dies down. The only way I can know what is true, what is real, is just to wait and see what arises, what comes up. And if something keeps coming up, then probably it's fair for me to go into that. So it's just happening as it's happening. There is no purpose. There is no. We cannot know anything. Nothing can really be known. People that think that they do, I think they're just deceiving themselves. And that's the nature of mind. That's what the mind does. Because one of the deepest conditioning of the mind is that we need to know, we need to feel safe, we need to know, we need to have some meaning, some sense of purpose, some sense of meaning in our life. It's one of the strongest fetters, it's one of the strongest layers of conditioning. So it's there until it's no longer there, and that's that. All right, the next one, reactivity. Do I have reactivity? No, not really. There is like layers to reactivity, right? There is the reactivity when, like, somebody says you're an idiot and you just go and punch him in the face. Like that's well, I've never really been into that, but I mean, like, reactivity that causes you to take action. So that gone probably like 2 years ago. So, and then there's deeper layers of reactivity where, an event happens and it causes you to have a certain emotion, a certain feeling, and go into a certain mood. So that is mostly gone, but occasionally that still happens with certain things. So there is like subtle and subtle levels of reactivity, but that's another way to see enlightenment. Is that enlightenment is just the end of reactivity, the complete and total annihilation of any reactivity. When you only respond to life, you are no longer reactive on anything. So that's one way to look at it. So I do have some reactivity from that perspective, of course. But like generally, I think to most people, compared to most people, I'm like extremely unreactive. Like I could be just sitting, and I'm also not very expressive. So I want to learn how to become more expressive so I can fit in better and look more normal. Okay, next one, seeing. So in terms of seeing, what I meant is there is this experience of seeing. It's like that's what it was, that kind of seeing. When you suddenly see, then it's like experience of realization, of insight, that sort of seeing of insight. That's a powerful experience. That is a big part of the process, of the path. I have it quite often. It comes and goes as well as anything else. But I like it. It's one of my favorite things about it. Like sometimes, like I see something that I haven't seen before, and there is like, and so that is one of those experiences that, like, if I had a purpose, that might be part of my purpose, to have more experiences of seeing things clearly, seeing things the way they are. Just like what the Buddha said, how the saying goes, when you see only what you see, when you hear only what you hear, and so kind of like that sort of seeing thing very clearly. So that's a big part of the process for me, at least. All right, self. What is the self? Does it exist? The self is the self is a dynamically generated entity. It's a conceptual structure that is built and maintained through thoughts and emotional reactivity. I have first seen that a little bit over 2 years ago when I was in deep meditation, and then I decided to look for the self in this deep stillness and silence. And I realized that I couldn't find it, and then I kept looking and looking and looking, and it wasn't there. And then suddenly there was some noise outside, and I got annoyed by that. Like, why are my neighbors so noisy? And out of that annoyance, the construct of the self suddenly was recreated inside that deep stillness. And that's when I realized, it's like, oh, that's how it works. So it's like there's a trigger and then a reaction, and out of that reaction the self somehow rises. So that's what the self is. It's this sort of structure, but it also has many levels, many layers to it. So the one that I described, that's one of the top layers, right? But like there are many layers to it. So like for some people, for example, their identity or their beliefs are important, are a big part of their self. For other people, it might be this the looker, the seer, or the experiencer is their layer of self where they are at, what we identify with. What is the ultimate reality of it all? I think that there is no self. I think that we have assumed that we exist, but we probably don't. It just happens. Things just happen. And we are able to tune into the experience of it happening. But we are not the ones in control. It just happens by itself. But I'm not, that is mostly my experience, not all the time and not like 100% clear or sure. But that seems to be how it is. And as I am saying that now, there is still some layers of fear, so I can still feel a bit of fear. It's like, I do not exist. So I haven't fully accepted that. I haven't fully adjusted to that reality yet. But it seems to be the case. But I guess we'll it's also like how does it all actually work? I don't know. It's a tricky question. But it experientially, it does seem like the self does not exist, or at least is not as powerful as we think it is. Like when you start looking through what am I actually in control of, you would realize that I don't control my senses. I don't control what I see, what I hear. It just happens. I don't control my decision making. It just happens. Like I don't really control my attention, like where it goes. It just kind of gravitates to whatever is the most important thing in the moment. And there is a sort of deeper layer of self that hasn't fully cleared yet, which is like maybe the perceiver. So it kind of comes and goes in that sense. So that's still there sometimes. Like sometimes I'm associated with that sense of being the perceiver. Typically what is said, what the masters say, or what the people who have completed the process say, is that after you finish that, you will be completely released in a way from identification with the body, with the mind. And that's where the experiences of like astral travel kind of come in. Like you would be able to go in, what is it called, like out of the body experiences. I haven't really had that, but I know many people that have, so it seems to be real. But I don't have as much interest in that also. It's like, okay, whatever. And by the way, like I don't have a lot of interest in that, interestingly. Like if I met an alien, it would be like, wow, that's fascinating. Like tell me about your, like it wouldn't be something like, wow. It would be just like, wow, that's fascinating. Tell me about your planet or whatever. Lots of things exist. Maybe they don't exist. I don't know. But the desire to know is not as intense. There is just a curiosity, but there is no like necessity or desire to know anymore. Yeah. So the self, how do I experience myself? I kind of don't. There is just a sort of transparency. Like there is a sense of being transparent in a way. And like there is practicality of it. When I'm hungry, I eat. When I do all the things that I'm supposed to do. So I can be very practically effective. And the self, like the having a sense of self, is not needed for that apparently. That was one of my biggest fears, by the way, because what if I just like forget to feed myself or forget to sleep or something? Because if I don't have a self, how would I be? But yeah, it turns out it's not an issue. That's fine. So when I ask myself, what am I? That the traditional question. There is no answer. There is just a kind of inner silence, the silence that's beyond the silence, not the silence that is the opposite of like loudness, noise, but it's just the silence that's beyond the silence, the stillness that's beyond the stillness. It's just this. There's just this. All right, stillness. Yeah, stillness it's there all the time. I throughout my journey, I always liked that experience of stillness, and I was particularly connected to that. Like there's different qualities of experience, and stillness was one of the things that I think for me was the main one. It still often is, but now it just become like normal, like very normal. It's just there. Yeah, it's nice. Suffering. Well, finally we get to the big one. Suffering. So is there still suffering? Do I still have suffering? I find it only when then there is like a trigger or a reason to suffer. Like when there is like strong physical pain, I will have suffering during the period when I have the pain, and then the pain is gone, the suffering is gone. Occasionally I would have suffering when there is some sort of belief or thought or experience that is very strong and powerful, like emotionally, right? And then I will like that energy is there, and I would experience some suffering, but then the energy is gone, it's released, and then the suffering is gone. And it's not the same suffering as like the suffering I had before that. Like when I was suffering, I was really suffering. It's like there was just suffering and nothing else. Now the suffering, it's like there is suffering, but then at the same time there is the realization. Yeah, there is this experience that I'm suffering, and there is this kind of part that okay, let's try to improve it, to find a way to reduce the suffering. So all those things are there. Yeah. All suffering is conceptual. Um, like even pain, and you can see it easily because, for example, like childbirth, it's extreme pain, but people often are happy when they are because of this conceptual understanding, the belief that I'm bringing a new life into the world, and that's so beautiful and so on. So if you ask them, they probably would say that they are not suffering. If you ask the woman right after childbirth, and she would probably say that yeah, there was pain, but there wasn't suffering. She's happy about it. Well, I don't know. I imagine so. And so there are many experiences like that people experience things that should be like extreme suffering. Like for example, somebody that has a belief system that says that dying in battle is the highest value in life, that they will go to Valhalla or whatever. They would probably, like, if they have extreme pain, if they're about to die, they might be very happy. So they might not be suffering if you were to ask them. So suffering is very conceptual. It really depends just on your belief systems. And then the society we live in, lots of people have very similar belief systems, very similar kind of deep structures of beliefs that we never question. And so our experiences of suffering are similar. Like, for example, one of them is pain. Typically, for most people, when they have pain, it's suffering. But it's not actually like that in most cultures. Like, there are certain cultures, certain places where, pain is not, like, they would not think that pain is suffering, they would look at it and be like, oh, okay, I have a pain, let's see what happens, what caused it. Maybe I need to do something about it or whatever. And then there would be people that like pain. So when you really think about it, all suffering is really conceptual. So when it's gone, it's gone. But there's a lot of those samsaras, there's a lot of those habit patterns that are associated with suffering. So where I am, yeah, like I don't have it most of the time, but occasionally things come up and it feels like some subtle layers of suffering. Yeah. And by the way, I think that if I had an experience that was very intense, physically, emotionally, like some kind of extremely intense occurrence, then I might have quite a bit of suffering. But I imagine that it would come and it would probably go at some point, some sort of adaptation, some sort of adjustment would happen, and I would be probably back to this, but I don't know. We'll see. All right. Thoughts. What about thoughts? So yeah, there is thoughts. A lot less than before, but yeah, there is definitely thoughts, but they're not necessarily as believable. Like I don't necessarily believe them as much or put as much emphasis on them anymore. Some of them are more sticky than others. They come and go, and sometimes there are just periods that there are no thoughts. But then at the same time, if there is, like let's say there is physical pain or there is some discomfort or some sort of conditioning coming up, then there could be more thoughts, and then the mind could be more active. But yeah, there is a lot less thoughts. And that's the big thing is that I don't believe thoughts anymore. I don't necessarily like take them very seriously, and that's why they don't carry as much weight. And that's what happens. Tools. What kind of tools have I found the most useful? What am I using now in this process? Well, the Byron Katie inquiry is good. All the work by Jeffrey Martin, the Finder's course, the 45-day course is great. I like vortex healing. It's kind of nice. I don't know how much it has helped me in the process, but it definitely made like the integration feel better. Probably, if I had to pick one, the Jeffrey Martin style, the 45-day course, the 45-day to awakening, that was probably the most effective in terms of that. And inquiry, all kinds of inquiry modalities. What am I using now? Occasionally I do the Byron Katie, then there's something that's coming up that I want to explore, that I want to inquire into. And occasionally I do vortex healing. And I use human design sometimes. Yeah, tools come and go. I've experimented with hundreds of different practices and tools. They all come and go, and they are effective, and they help until they don't. So transparency. Oh, the transparency that I mentioned, like then I think about the self, what am I? There is a kind of transparency where the body should be. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's like, yeah, it's like before when I thought of myself, what I am, I would think, oh, I am Michael. This is my name. This is my parents, my nationality. I'm a businessman. I am an investor. I'm smart. I'm whatever. And then a lot of that started to decrease, and then there would be, oh, I'm my body, or I'm my thoughts, and then that was gone, and it's like, oh, I'm stillness, I'm silence, and so on, and kind of like goes down and down and down, and now it's kind of like there is a sense of transparency, like kind of nothingness. So, and transparency is kind of a good thing to describe this process, by the way. For me, I think it's just transparent, like everything has become a lot more transparent. And by the way, life is just easy. It's like living life on easy mode. Everything is just very easy now, much easier than before. Before I was living life on hard mode, like extra hard, because I had so much fear, so much anxiety, so much depression all the time. Everything was difficult, like talking to people. Like there was so much conditioning around everything. Like I needed people to react in a certain way, to think a certain way, to respond in a certain way. And then whenever they did that caused so much suffering. So everything is just much easier. It's like, yeah, things just happen. Everything is easier. It's like living life on easy mode. A war. That's apparently the last one. It's not the one I wanted to finish with, but what are my views on war? I mean, war happens. It's part of the human conditioning, the human psyche. It's yeah. I don't know why I put this one here. So yeah, and how will I wrap it up? Yeah, to summarize this, it's nice. It's nice. Things are easy and it's just nice. I like it.